Well, hey guys, welcome to a new video. What today we're going to learn about is the switch statement and the char variable. So let's just get started. So the char type variable, it's the most basic type in C, and in C, char variables have an integer value, and they're critical for switch statements. That's why I'm bringing them up today. And the char variable, it stores a single character. Right, and char and arrays, which we will learn about later, will be used to store strings later in this course. And just like integer and doubles, this has a placeholder. The placeholder is %c for char type variables, just like %d is for int or %f is for double. So declaring char variables, they can be scanned in exactly like int and double variables, and they can be declared the same way as ints or doubles, but instead with char. So here's an example. So I'm declaring a variable of char of type char, and I'm naming it a. So I'm gonna print out a question to the user. I'm gonna say enter a letter. So I'm going to scan in that letter with %c. Since this is type char, if this was like an integer, it'd be %d. If this was a double, it'd be %f. But since we want this to be a character, it's going to be %c. And we're going to do the same thing with the scanf. We're going to use the ampersand sign and with the variable name. So to print it out will be exactly the same as ints and doubles, except with the placeholder as %c. So %c is the letter, and we declare it at the end of the printf statement. So let's say the input is b. So enter letter. Input is b. The output is going to be b is the letter, but if we put c, it would be c is the letter. So we're going to do switch statements. So what exactly is a switch statement? A switch statement allows a variable to be tested for equality against a list of integers. It's pretty much a list, and you're comparing a value to that list. And each value is called a case, and that's what's being checked for. So here's an example. Let's say you have a variable of a grade, and you're trying to ask the user, what grade did you get? It's going to be 1, 2, or 3. So you're going to get that input from that grade. So say the user put in they got a 3 on their for their grade, right? So by implementing this switch statement, it's going to search for this variable for the same value since we're feeding it grade, right? So let's say you put in 3, it's going to try to find case 3. So once it finds its value, it's going to execute these statements right here. So it's going to be printf, and it's going to print out excellent and break. And so it's going to break out of the statement. We're going to talk a little bit more about these keywords in a second. Just so you can just know how a switch statement looks. So this keyword switch, it implements the switch statement. And what you're going to put is you're going to put an integer variable or an integer value that you want to compare with this list. This list you're making on your own. It's case by case basis. You might need it for something else. You need to make a new case switch statement. So let's say the user inputted 1, right? Let's say they inputted 1. The value of grade is 1. So it's going to search for case 1. It comes here, it's like, no, case 3, it's going to skip it. Doesn't match. It's going to go to case 2, skip it because it doesn't match. Once it finds case 1, it's going to execute these statements right here. So it's going to printf, it's going to print poor, and then break out of the statement. So I asked you to go through 1 through 3. I enter value 1, 2, 3. But what if you entered 0 or you entered 4? So the value of grade would be 4. So it's going to be searching for 4. It's going to be searching for this value, searching for this value. But none of these are 4. So it's going to have to default to the last statement. And the default statement, what it says, it's pretty much saying it's going to print an illegal value, and then it's going to break out of the statement. So, like I said, there's 4 keywords you need to know: switch, and it implements the switch statement. And within the parentheses, there's going to be an integer variable. That's what it's comparing. It's comparing an integer variable. And then there's case. This sets the value that's needed to execute these following statements. So you need a 3 from grade to execute these statements. You need a 2 from grade to execute these statements, and so forth. And break. It breaks out of the switch statement. So if it's case 3, it prints out excellent, and it reaches this breakpoint and just gets out completely from the switch statement. If this break wasn't here, it'll move on to the next one, print that out, and then break. But what if none of these had breaks? Then it would print excellent, average, poor, and illegal value and break out. So you have to be careful. There's ways to implement this type of switch statements. It's called fall through, that we'll look in a sec. That can be to your advantage. And the default statement, it's usually the last statement, and it's if you can't find this value that's inputted, it can't test anything in the switch statement. So if a case value cannot be matched with a variable value in the statement, so if this value cannot be matched with any of these, it's going to go to the default and execute these statements right here, which is it's going to print out illegal value and break from the switch statement. So one thing I want to get clear before moving on, because we are going to be looking at switch statements that test against characters. And like I said in the beginning, in C, char variables have an integer value, which is critical for switch statements because switch statements test integer values. They do not test double values. So that's one thing to remember. They only test integer values. I apologize. So these little characters right here, you should place your letter, whichever one that you want, in your switch statement. So let's say I'm asking you to put in your grade from your last test, A, B, C, D, F, right? And you place that in there. To test for that letter, you're gonna put these little quotation marks and have your letter inside, because this allows the compiler to read this as a character, and it's going to have an integer variable, some sort of integer variable. If not, the compiler is going to look at it as like it's on an undeclared variable. So using this allows the compiler to read it as an integer variable, and if we don't read it, it's going to be looking at it as a variable that's undeclared. So here's one example that I was talking about. So you're going to declare a character of the name grade. So it's going to be showing to enter the letter grade. So we're going to print out this statement and asking to enter a letter grade. We're going to do exactly the same as we did before. We're going to scanf with that %C, and we're going to store it in grade. And now we're going to feed grade into the switch statement. So this is what's good about C, that it reads integer variables. It's going to allow us to test this character in a switch statement. So let's say you got a letter C for your last test, right? It's going to come to this case, be like, no, you didn't get an A. It's not reading exactly the letter. It's reading an integer variable from a list of characters that we'll definitely get into in a few videos, but you don't necessarily need to know that at the moment. But it's going to compare this integer variable with this integer variable. So it's going to go to case, be like, no, this doesn't match. Going to go to B, it doesn't match. When it gets to C, and this matches, It's going to print out this statement you got to see onto the terminal, and then it's going to break from the switch statement and complete the program. So the program is going to be like enter a letter grade. You put in a letter grade, and it's going to print out one of these statements and break from it. And for example, if you put in, let's say you put in E, it can't match up with any of these. E does not match up with any of these, so it's going to go to the default statement. It's going to print out the value is illegal and break. All right. So the exact same program. So we have our main, we have our integer, enter letter grade, the percent %C because it's a character. We're trying to get a character, and we're storing that in grade. Now grade is being fed into the switch statement to compare against one of these cases. And if these don't match whatsoever, it's going to go to the default and print out value is illegal. So let's do that right now. Let's print that out. So it's going to ask us to enter a letter grade. And by the way, C is case sensitive, so A is not the same as capital A is not the same as lowercase a. They have different values. So, as you can see, we can enter the letter A, right? And it's going to print out this statement right here. You got an A. So let's rerun that. So let's put, I got a D. So it's going to print out you got a D. But what if we put a lowercase a? The value is illegal because C is case sensitive and the values of capital A and lowercase a are not the same. But here, I'll show you something about fall through. How about we take off this break right here? So just by taking off that break, say you put in, you got an A on the test. It's going to print this out, but there's no break statement to tell the compiler to leave the switch statement. And so it's going to keep going down. So it's going to print you got a B, and then we reach another breakpoint, and it's going to break from the statement. So let's do that one more time. I have an A. Now I have you got an A and you got a B. But we put that break back. There you go. You got an A because without that break, it's not telling the compiler to leave the switch statement, and it's going to keep going and going and going. So, for example, let's say I take out these three, right? So what do you think is going to happen? It's going to go to case A. If you put A, it's going to print out you got an A. Then going to keep going, you got a B and you got a C. But let's say you put in B. It's going to print this out, go to the next one because there's no break statement, and go to the next one and the next one until it reaches this break statement here. So you enter letter grade B, you got a B. You got a B, no break statement. You got a C, no break statement right here. You got a D. Finally a break statement. So these three statements will be printed out. Okay, I think that's enough for this one. I hope you guys understand that one good enough. Let's just comment this out for our other practice problems we are going to look at. And let's go back into our PowerPoint real quick. Okay, so just like I was talking to you guys about fall through, so it's a manipulation of cases, the location of the cases, and the number of breaks within the switch statement. And the reason we use this, it's really good to reduce time, and you'll see this right here. So we are given a grade 1 through 5. Let's say we put in case 5. So there's nothing to print here. So you don't have to write the printf or the break statement. And it goes to 4. There's nothing to write here. No printf statement, no break. And then you get to case 3. and then it prints passing and breaks out. So what it's pretty much saying is that 5, 4, and 3 are passing grades. So if you put 5, 4, 3, it's gonna print out passing, and then it's gonna break out. But let's say you put in 2. Let's say you skip to 2, right? It's gonna not print out anything, but still go down into this printf statement. And it says failing, and then break. So if you put 2 or 1, it's gonna print failing. And if you put any other number, it's gonna say it's an illegal value. So what this switch statement is saying is 543 is passing and 2 1 is failing. Any other number is illegal. So this is why we use fall through. It's really good to save time, to not have to write a case for every single thing, not have to write a block of statements for every single piece. So let's just get started on some questions right now. All right. So question number 1. You guys need to try this to try to get used to some switch statements. So the question: write a C program to input a week numbers 1 through 7 and print the day of the week name using a switch case. So we'll start as Monday's values 1, Tuesday's values 2, etc. So here's an example program. So you're going to print out input week number 1 through 7, and you're going to input this value here. And I want the program to automatically generate this. So if it was 5, it'd be Friday. If it was 6, it'd be Saturday. So you guys go ahead, think about how you're going to lay out this program and this switch statement, and come back when you guys are ready. Alright, so I'll just get started on this. Let me comment this out real quick. So I went ahead and did this just because the switch statement is a little long. So we'll just go step by step. So I included the directive, wrote the main function. So I did an integer value for day, since we are going to be entering an integer value, and I'm feeding that into the scanf statement. So the scanf statement would be %d, and we're storing that value in day. And we're using this integer value to feed it into the switch statement, and we're going to compare this to the cases. So for case 1, it's going to be Monday, and it's going to break out of statement. If it was case 2, if the value of day is 2, same thing. It's going to be the same thing 1 through 7. And then for the last one, if it's not 1 through 7, it print out illegal value. So we'll run this through. So let's say we input 3. This should be Wednesday. Let's try a new one. Let's say 7. This should be Sunday. And one more for good reference. So it'd be 5 for Friday. But let's say we want to take out one of these breaks. Let's say we want to take out Wednesday's breaks. If I put 3, if I feed 3, if I scan 3 in, what do you think it's going to print out? It's going to print out Wednesday, Thursday. Because there's no break statement to tell the compiler to leave when it's on case 3. So Wednesday, Thursday. And we'll just put the break statement back. Well, I hope you guys got that one. We're going to move on to the second and last question for today. Alright. So, this one's definitely going to be a little bit tougher. You got to think a little bit more on this one. So, we're going to write a C program to input an alphabet letter and check whether it's a vowel or consonant using the switch case statement. So it's going to check to see if it's a vowel or consonant. Here's one example. You're going to input the letter. You can put alphabet or letter. For some reason, this question just said alphabet. So we're going to input C. And this is going to be automatically generated. And C is a consonant. So the switch statement is going to say C is a consonant. And here's example 2. Input an alphabet. we're gonna input A, and A is a vowel. So we're gonna say that A, E, I, uh, oops, E-A-I-O-U-Y are vowels, and everything else is a consonant. So um, make sure to use fall through through this switch statement, and make sure to use the default statement, the default case, very appropriately. So you should try to take some time to do this program and come back when you're ready. Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna get started on this. All right, let me get rid of these comments real quick. So, directive main. So we're gonna declare a char variable for letter because we're inputting this letter right here, this character. So we're gonna printf the question. So input, well, I put input a letter, and we're gonna scan that in by %c since we're using a char variable, and we're gonna store this in letter. So the switch statement is going to be fed letter, and it's going to read this integer value and compare it with this case, this switch statement. So for this one, I am using fall through for case A, E, I, O, U, Y. So if any of these are typed in, they're automatically going to be going to printing this. So if case A, if you input A, it's going to input %C, which is going to be the A, because we're declaring it here, and it's going to print out is a vowel. For default, if it's none of these, right? If it's C, it's going to print out %C, which is going to be C, is a consonant. So that's how you use the fall through and the defaults. Real good. So you don't have to put the rest of 19, 20 consonants into this switch statement. So we'll just run this just to make sure. So let's say we want to put input a letter D. D is a consonant. Let's say we want to put Y. Y is a vowel. Let's say we want to put O. O is a vowel. And just for last measure, input a letter Z. Z is a consonant. So you guys have to make sure to appropriately use fall through default statement, because the default statement could help you save a lot of work and time. And for the first time, we talked about char variables and how to use um, characters in C. We haven't talked about it before, so I know it's a little tough. I want you guys to make sure you guys know how to do this, because for the next video we're doing a programming project. From the premise, the question is going to look like it's easy, but it's actually going to be a little bit more difficult, and you got to think about it, and you're going to have to rack your brain to see to solve this question. But I hope to see you guys in the next video. Make sure you understand this, because the next video is going to be a programming project, and it's going to be about the switch statement. Well, thank you guys. This is Everything Programming, and I'll see you guys later.